Welcome back to this episode of Japan's Top Business Interviews, and I'm your host, Dr. Greg Story, the president of Dale Carnegie Training Japan, and I have a special guest today, Pierre Gaulis of Cream. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Greg.
Thank you, Pierre. So, Pierre, for our listeners and our viewing audience, tell us a little bit about how you got to Japan, why you're running a digital agency here, and give us some background on you a little bit and the experiences you've had so far in Japan.
Sure, with pleasure. So my name is Pierre Gaulis. I come from Lausanne, which is the French-speaking part of Switzerland. I'm 38 years old. I've been living in Japan now 13 years, and I'm married, have one son. And what brought me to Japan, essentially, the part from where I'm from in Switzerland is very international. And I was lucky enough to travel a lot with my family when I was a kid. So I got this taste for basically discovering new countries, new cultures from an early age. And then later on, when I was in high school and then in university, I started to have this idea and this dream of basically going and trying to live abroad for a while once I was finished with my studies. And so when it came to the choice of the destination, because I was lucky enough to have that choice, I quickly thought that I wanted something that was drastically different from what I experienced back in Switzerland. So for me at that point, it's true that even though I really liked the United States or other parts of Europe, it was not that exotic. And so at that point, the idea of Japan came back. I say it came back because I had my first connection with Japan, as maybe is the case for other people, was actually initially martial arts. When I was a kid, I did a lot of karate and aikido and other martial arts. So I had that connection, right, without really knowing the country, though. Did
you take those arts through to getting your black belt in aikido and karate and get down rankings?
Yes. In aikido, yes, I was first dan. Mm-hmm. It's probably very rusty right now, so don't challenge me, please. But yeah, that was a long time ago. But yeah, matter of fact, one of my plans initially when coming to Japan was to pursue also more martial arts. But actually things unfolded in a very different way because, so first I came here in vacation to first have a taste of Japan, and that confirmed me in the idea that I really wanted to come and live here. And the main reason was that because I was so attracted by how everything is so different, right? We can get back to that after, I think. But then, I decided to come here, and literally last week before my flight, I had a ski accident, So as all Swiss people, I ski. And I had a very stupid ski accident, and I cut my Achilles tendon, which is one of the worst things you can do as a martial artist because you use the tip toes a lot.
Spring.
Yes, exactly. And so because of that, I got stuck in Switzerland for almost another year, a matter of fact, because with all the re-education and everything. And eventually, at the end, I still decided to pursue my dream and to come to Japan. And obviously now it's been 13 years, so yeah, I think I would never have thought at that moment that I would stay that long in Japan, yeah.
So 13 years ago you came to Japan, yep. So you've spent a year recuperating, Achilles tendon's healed, now you're ready to go.
Yes.
Turn up in Japan, what do you do when you get here?
Yeah, so I pretty much came here with the only plan was to basically learn Japanese. No other plan. So I came here without a job. That was straight out of university, right? So I came here with some savings and with the idea of at least learning some basic Japanese. Like this, I thought, if I don't like it and I go back after 6 months or a year, at least I have something more on my resume, right? So as soon as I arrived here, I enrolled into this Japanese language school, and I did intensive Japanese. Retrospectively, obviously, it was a very good thing because, I could learn really, have a steep learning curve for Japanese right at the beginning, which enabled me later on to really be able to speak and operate in Japanese, right? So at that time, I was mostly doing Japanese during the first year and doing a bit of freelance consulting for some Swiss companies who had an interest in the Japanese market. That was the beginning, right? Then after that, a year in, I started working here for an online media group called G+ Media. And so basically G+ Media was and is still the main player when it comes to online media in Japan, in English. And they operate some of the famous sites that you probably know and some of our viewers know, such as Gaijin Pot or Japan Today. And so I started with them as a project manager. I think that it's at that time that we met, actually. I was doing a project with a joint project with all the chambers of commerce in Japan. And then my role evolved to something more general, and I worked as there for 3 more years as a business development manager. And that was, of course, a very good experience for me. Because it really put me at the forefront of the activity of the company and forced me to meet a lot of people, really go out, which is not necessarily the thing that I would do naturally. And so really build this network in Japan that later on would enable me to actually become an entrepreneur and build my own company.
And at what point, you're there for 3 years, do you start your own company at that stage, or does that happen later?
No, so it really happened later. So I was always quite entrepreneurial, although I never really had I would say a real structured company before that. But I did a couple of things on my side, right? Now, after 4 years at G+ Media, it was really like a natural evolution for me to try to build my own company. So at the time, it was basically really the time, it was back in 2009, 2010. It was really at the time where the apps, mobile and the apps really exploded, right? So everybody was talking about the iTunes store, everybody wanted to have its own application and things like that. And so me and some of my friends at that time who became my co-founders, basically we decided to seize this opportunity to build our own business, and things happened quite naturally. So I left actually G+ Media. I kept a consulting role for just a small transition phase, and then I ended up basically leading the beginning of Cream. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so tell us a bit about Cream today.
Yeah.
People may not be familiar with what your business is.
Sure. So Cream, essentially, we're a digital creative studio or digital creative agency. If you want to put an umbrella term on what we do, that would be digital transformation. So essentially what we do is we work with mid to large companies usually who tend to be multinationals. And we help them basically embrace all the technology that is out there today, which they don't necessarily really know how to leverage, right? And I would say we got a few particularities, right? The first one is that we're actually small. We're a boutique company. I have a team of 10 people, very international. And so basically this is by design, by choice, right? Is that we like it this way. We like to work closely one with another, and also closely with our clients, right? We work in direct with our clients, so not through larger advertising agencies typically. So we work directly with our clients, and yeah, so I would say that's one of our specificities, the fact that we're small and therefore more agile, more flexible. The second one would be that we're really digital from day one. So you would see a lot of structures, and I'm not being judgmental here, but just that have a longer history. So naturally they started more with a print background or a TV background, and they transitioned into digital and online. Us, we were lucky enough back in 2010 to start from day one with the decision of being solely focused on digital. So my team is young. They are what we call digital natives, right? And that is really helpful.
20s? Are they sort of 20s, early 30s? That's sort of when you talk about young?
Yeah, exactly. Late 20s. Mostly. I think probably average. I never actually calculated, but I would say probably average late 20s, maybe 30 years old max. Yeah.
So, you go from working for a company, G Plus Media, and then with some partners, you start to create a business, and at some point, you start bringing on staff. Now, you're leading people in Japan. So, it doesn't sound like you're doing anything like that, particularly back in Lausanne, but now here in Japan, you're a leader, leading in Japan. So, what were some of the challenges for you initially as a leader?
Yeah, but so obviously, so generally speaking, I would tend to say that I did everything the hard way, probably. So
for example,
meaning that I'm a guy who's pretty I would say instinct driven. I trust my gut feeling, and I'm a passionate person, right? So basically, when I want to do something, I don't look at it under necessarily all the angles, and I just go for it, and I make it happen one way or another, right? So retrospectively, I would probably do a lot of things differently. Our story, and I'll get back to the leadership aspect in particular, but typically already started in a weird way because we incorporated at the end of 2010. And so and then I started really doing business development at that time. And so obviously in March 2011, there was the earthquake followed by the tsunami and Fukushima disaster, right? So that was literally at the moment where we started to be really in business with our first clients, right? And so at that time, everything was canceled. And essentially, we started working again only at the end of 2011. So already right off the bat, that was basically a leadership challenge because how do you keep a team functioning when essentially there's no business?
How did you do that?
So at some point, this is a situation that is so extreme that at some point you cannot do magic, right? But as much as possible, I try to leverage this opportunity in this time window to basically work on strengthening our setup right off the bat. So having typically for us a good website. Trying to already build some prototypes of things that we could eventually later on propose to some clients. So essentially, I try to build a bit our assets and use this time in the best way possible, right? And so I would say at that time and as later on, the most important aspects of leadership was basically building trust. Building trust that even though it's very early on in the story of the company, that basically we're trying to build something together and we're all in the same boat. And you got this expression, I believe in English as well, that it's through adversity that you reveal yourself, right? And I really believe in that. And I think that this was a very example of the fact that this is true, right?
So practically speaking, what did you do to build trust?
The first thing is stay, because when a lot of people left at that time. So I think typically from a Japanese counterpart perspective, so not only internal but also external vis-a-vis the clients that we started to have at that time, I really see the fact that we were committed despite this catastrophe to stay in Japan and to support them. That obviously it was a testament to our commitment and to the fact that we deserve the trust.
Well, just to put that in context for many people who were not in Japan at that time, and I was in Japan at that time too, and I didn't leave Tokyo. But a lot of foreigners left the country.
Yes.
A lot of foreigners went to West Japan because they're so worried about the radiation particularly. So, yes, the choice to stay, it was not a light thing. And so from a client staff point of view, by the fact that you stayed showed your commitment, I think, and I understand that point. But just in case that's not clear, when you say you stayed, that was not like, oh yeah, I'll stay. It's like, well, we got a radioactive storm passing over Tokyo. You can't drink the water for a number of days because of the radioactivity in the water. people worried about their kids, supermarkets being cleaned out of food. It was a serious event, wasn't it?
Yes, exactly. It was really a decision to make, whether you stay or whether you leave. And I obviously don't blame anyone who left.
Why? I mean, many people left. I mean, I know why I stayed, but I want to know why you stayed.
Yes. So there was probably two things at that time. One was basically the professional side of things and the business side of things. So as I said, that was just when we started the company. So I wanted to basically commit to that and not let our team and partners down. Another aspect was a more of a personal one. At that time, that's actually when early in the relationship with the person who would become my wife. And basically, she's also a foreigner, but she's from China. And so typically, as a Swiss citizen, during that time, all the countries, it's good to know that all the countries, they made some plans to repatriate people, and typically us as Swiss citizens, we had such option, but at that time, a Chinese citizen didn't have that chance. So for me, it was also obvious that I could not leave the country and leave my girlfriend at the time.
I'll see you when I get back, honey, when it's safe.
Exactly, that's not the best to build a sane relationship, I would say. And so basically that was not really a question. So that's I think the two reasons why I stayed here. Yeah.
Okay, so staying by itself does create a lot of trust. What other things do you are still doing to build trust? First of all, I would say the company is still small. So obviously the luck that we have is that we're literally working very close with one another, right? So it makes I would say it's impossible in my company not to really know what's going on with other people, right? And that naturally, even without doing so many efforts, participates in building trust. Because ultimately it's difficult to, I think there's a negative correlation between the distance that you have with people and the level of trust that you can build, right? So you open plan office, is that how it works? So no offices locked away?
Yes, we have an open plan office. We're actually changing office right now, but it will stay open plan. And then also we're just like small, and we're really from where I sit, I can see everyone. So basically, this participates in building trust. Another thing that
How about the mix of people? You said before you've got quite international. So how many Japanese, how many non-Japanese have we got here?
Yes, so 80% of our team is non-Japanese, actually. Okay. And I think that this is a good ratio for us. It has been a good ratio so far. It's good to mention, though, that out of the international individuals that I have, most of them speak Japanese, right? And all the Japanese individuals that I have are fluent in English. And this really speaks to, I think, both our DNA, which is really basically bridging the gap between, Japan and abroad, and also to what our clients are looking for when they work with us, right? I don't think we're necessarily the company for every client. We bring a very specific skill set and DNA. But I think if you're typically a multinational that operates in Japan, and that has the majority of your team that is Japanese, and also have some foreigners, whether in mid-management or in top management. I think outside, obviously, all the package that we bring in our field of expertise, which is digital, we also bring this extra factor of understanding about what can be the communication issues between Japanese and foreigners, managing expectations, and all those basically soft skills that are hard to learn in the end, and you can only probably learn that through a long experience living and working in Japan.
And do you have a different approach to how you lead the Japanese compared to the foreigners?
Yes, definitely.
Oh, okay. How does that work?
Definitely. So The Japanese who work with us tend to be, I would say, have some experience abroad, right? It wouldn't work otherwise, because my management style is very much about empowerment. And since we're a small team, there's no way around the fact that each team member needs to be really independent, be a self-starter, and be someone who is not only, I would say, capable, but is really willing to take some responsibilities and get stuff done, right? This being said, even with this careful, I would say, selection of our team members, of course, I deal with Japanese members and foreign members differently. Because I just think that the way of thinking is fundamentally different in the end. Even for Japanese people who had exposure to abroad, or for foreigners who had exposure to Japan, you can change the culture in which those people grew up, and that plays a big role in the way that they function. So I'm going to make some broad generalizations here, right? In the end, the devil is in the detail, but generally speaking, it's not a cliche to say that Japanese people tend to like to have better and more precise instructions about what you're expecting from them. So one thing that I try to do as much as possible is basically take the time to basically answer the question that come beforehand, or even to actually anticipate as much as possible on certain questions that might arise later on. That's one thing. The second thing is I put some emphasis on the fact that it's okay to basically try things, and to, even if sometimes you fail. Because as we know, Japanese people, generally speaking, are obviously more risk averse. So if you don't really overemphasize the fact that it's okay to try stuff, even if sometimes you do it wrong, and that ultimately we learn as we do, sometimes nothing happens because there's this sort of paralysis that takes place. So these, I would say, are the two main things that I do the most when it comes to dealing with Japanese team members.
Are you doing business with Japan? Do you really know how things work? Japan Business Mastery provides the answers. Do you have the right networks and know how to create them? Do you know how to get on the same wavelength with Japanese buyers? Do you know what being trustworthy looks like from the Japanese perspective? Japan Business Mastery is based on more than 30 years' experience in Japan and will become your go-to guide. Want to succeed in Japan? Buy Japan Business Mastery now. And you've got a mixed team.
Yeah.
So different culture backgrounds, different education systems, different expectations, I'm sure. How do you get the whole team engaged?
The first thing is instilling, again, this sense of responsibility. I think you get necessarily engaged while you feel and you know that you have some responsibility. Because frankly, there's no way around it. around it. If you have responsibility, you need to deliver whatever it takes, and you need to talk to your peers and work with them closely. That's the first thing. The second thing I would say is basically think about each and everyone's role on the project that we work on. In our company, since we're small, we can not take 20 projects at a time. We tend to rather choose a bigger project, more interesting project, and so sometimes those projects would involve the whole company.
So when you talk about a bigger project, what sort of number? Are we talking 1 million yen, 5 million yen, 10 million yen, 20 million yen? How big a project?
Yeah, so our typical projects would be anywhere between I would say 3 months and a year to 12 months. Generally, after they evolve to something else that always requires some evolution, some continuous development, some maintenance. But I would say the intensive phase of our project tend to be between 3 and 12 months, and they would range anywhere between, if we're in yen, anywhere between basically senman to probably sanzenman.
Okay.
Roughly, yeah. And so that would be
roughly.
Let's
roughly say $100,000 to $300,000, roughly.
In dollars, yeah, exactly, in dollars.
Roughly.
That's roughly the range in which we operate, and that is both the price tag and I would say the length of the project reflects our methodology and also what we do. One of our specificities is that we're not basically a company that just come here to do some execution. So typically to, for example, code a website or design an application. We are also a consultancy. So essentially, the project that feed our team and the clients that feed our team are people who usually come with either a challenge or a new initiative where the technological aspect and the digital aspect plays a big role. And so what we would do is start with a discovery phase, and that discovery phase could take up to at least a third of the project time and budget. So before we actually design or build anything, we take the time to understand what's at stake, do some research. That's our methodology.
So when you think about trying to be competitive, innovations and creativity is a big part of that. Coming up with more creative solutions, better innovation in the solutions for clients to attract them to your company. So if you've got a good engagement level inside the company, then people, generally speaking, will be more innovative. And if you're not engaged, you don't care. Who cares what happens? But when you care and engage, then you're interested. How can we make it better? How can we, have more Kaizen going on here? How we have sort of big leaps of creativity? How do you get creativity out of your team?
The first thing is by having the right people, to be honest.
You took a very deep breath there, I've got to say, when I asked that
Yes,
question.
indeed. No, indeed, because I think there's just so much that can be actually learned and taught past a certain stage. So that's why I revert first and foremost, of course, I'm not going to limit my answer to that, but I reversed first and foremost to actually hiring and to the selection of the people. In our company, it's such an important thing because we are a digital creative agency, right? So the creative, there's a reason why there are, within those 3 words, there's the word creative. And by the way, that in my mind and in my words, that doesn't refer to creative meaning doing some nice things, right? It's really about creative thinking, first and foremost, right? And so hiring the right people, the people who, not everyone has the propensity and the ability to basically think in a creative way. So the first thing is hire after you have tested for this ability. You can test that by a lot of ways. Typically, I use always, it's just a simple thing, but I always have my candidates taking a Big 5 personality test, which already gives you, albeit simple, but an indication of how those people can basically be creative and manage in an environment that is basically challenging. Right?
Chaotic, perhaps?
Sometimes chaotic. Yes. So that's the first aspect: is hire the right people. Then, once you got your team, I think it comes along with the ability. A lot of the creativity. Encouragement that you can do comes through the ability to basically provide feedback and have a real impact on basically how the company is run. I think if you give some feedback or you give you propose some initiatives, and like you see that effectively not only you are heard, but it's being implemented, right? Of course, it cannot happen all the time, but sometimes. Then it really basically gives you really a lot of positive encouragement to do more of that, right? And at thinking outside of the box, not only limiting yourself to your responsibilities as you were mentioning in the job description, but just to be thinking of yourself as a team member and as an integral part of the bigger organization. And I think this is one thing. So encouraging feedback, implementing some of the feedback, giving credit to the people who actually brought this up, and showing the result that it can have on the whole organization. I think that plays a big part, yeah.
If you want to be successful as a leader, do the Leadership Training for Managers course. All companies need people who can both manage and lead. Leading people screams out for real skills in communication, dealing with all different types of people, being excellent at innovation, planning, delegation, handling mistakes, doing performance reviews really well, and inspiring and motivating the team. Do the Leadership Training for Managers course now in either Japanese or English. Well, the innovation process by definition is messy and mistakes happen. So, this Latin temperament, how does that extend to when mistakes happen? How do you deal with mistakes?
Yeah, so for me, it's really everything we do is about learning by doing, and I really mean it. That's the so I take basically mistakes really as an investment. Literally speaking, I'm thinking that's one mistake that's not going to happen again, right? And frankly, getting back to the story of, you asked me how I started the company and basically a bit the story behind that. Me as an entrepreneur, I really made pretty much all the mistakes that you can imagine doing when building a company.
Like what? What would be some examples?
So typical ones. So the wrong country to incorporate to start with that, right? Some problems with the founders, and then with the way that we manage the agreement, right? The shareholder agreement. Then the way that the first people that we hired, the first commitment that we gave on certain projects, where we overshot or things like that. I mean, pretty much, again, myself, I learned really. It was in the hard way, as I mentioned before, really doing a lot of mistakes. But then again, fast track now, 13 years in Japan and 10 years at the head of my company. That's where I draw now the confidence that I have when I approach a new project or a new partner clients, because I've been hands-on actually into probably dozens or hundreds, I didn't count them, of projects of very different nature. And so basically, and I've made the mistakes, so hopefully those mistakes, I can spare those mistakes and avoid my clients to do the similar mistakes.
So if you're giving some advice to some people who have been given an assignment, okay, you're going to go to Japan, you're going to run the operation there, what would be 3 pieces of advice you'd give someone who's about to get on a plane and come here?
So the first thing would be really to test your commitment, to be really committed actually to first and foremost the idea of coming here and trying to achieve something here. In Sinex term, you would say really ask the why, and really ask this question many times and be sure that you're super committed, because Like it or not, Japan is still a very special market, where a lot of things work differently. So if you come here and you want to operate here, you're going to be here you need to be here for the long game, Things are not going to happen overnight. So the first thing that I would give as a piece of advice is just think about really the reasons, make sure that it's worth it, and be really committed. That would be the first thing, yes. The second thing, once you've tested that commitment and you arrive here and you start doing things, I would say might sound really simple, but find some local partner. Typically, it can be a co-founder. It can be an insider into the industry that you're in. It can be a managing director. Depends on your organization, your industry, and anything. But I think that you will realize very, very quickly that even though you make a lot of efforts and everything, it's very hard. And again, it takes a lot of time to get things done here. If you don't really know, how to operate, how to read people. I'm not even talking about the language aspect, which is sometimes I take it as an obvious one, but really past the language barrier, it's really about basically having someone who knows how the local market works and how to operate and has a network. Yeah, that's the second one. And the third one that I was thinking about that is really dear to our activity is to hyper-localize what you do. Hyper-localize.
What does hyper-localize mean?
So sometimes
as opposed to localize?
Sometimes I use Japanize, localize, hyper-localize. I want to insist on. No, hyper-localize perhaps opposed as localize, because localize, for some people, it only refers to actually translate, right? And I think it's true for the offline world, but even more so in the online world. When I mention localize and think about localize, which we do a lot, I think about it with a big L. So it means really thinking about basically product market fit or service market fit. It's not because something works abroad that it's naturally going to work here. A lot of people do this assumption and basically fall into this trap. It doesn't also, on the other side, it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to change everything, but I bet that there are certain aspects of basically your user experience that you need to adapt and to really localize to fit the Japanese market. Yes, so that would be the three main things. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very
much. That's been fascinating. So here we have our most recent episode of Japan's top business interviews, and thank you very much to Pierre for his insights. A very fascinating talk. Please join us again on our next episode.